Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of the Livia Dev Log series. My name is Jade, and I am the programmer. God help me. um, all jokes aside, I'm gonna machine gun through these points because I don't want to ramble. So first off are the things that we have changed that I can remember since the last time we spoke, you and me, stranger on the internet, which actually was like a month ago. It was supposed to be 2 weeks ago. I missed that deadline. And I will maybe explain that. I'll explain that now. So I missed the deadline because I had been working in programming, but a lot of it for that first week and a half was me just ripping out code that needed to be replaced because I tried to salvage the code that will be mentioned in a second to turn it into what I needed it to be, but that was creating more complications than it would have been if I just had pulled it out, right? So I spent time salvaging the code, which was a mistake. I spent time mentally preparing myself to rip out the code and really thinking, like, is that the right thing to do? Would it make more sense just to salvage it, or am I costing more time by doing that? And I came to the conclusion that I was costing more time by salvaging the code, so I decided not to do that. It's essentially what happened. So that's kind of what took me like that first week and a half, and then by the time I had started getting code down, it was time to do the update, and I didn't really have much to show for an update. And I'm sure my professor would have appreciated me just giving him an update, to be completely honest, and for that I apologize. I also have just been busy with school and also catching up with this. It was like, do I sprint or do I waste 3 hours of my life recording a 20-minute video that I will retake 16 times because I cannot speak straight, which is why I now have a notebook with bullet points. So with that bullet point removed, we will move on to our list. So first thing I did was increase the attack speed. People keep telling me to do this, and I keep increasing it, and it's still not fast enough. I still want it to be faster, and I've got to the point where I think it's just the animations. I just think that they're not fast enough, they're not good enough. And I think it's because in my head, the animations that I want are very snappy, right? I'm thinking of like Devil May Cry, I'm thinking of something like cool and flashy and like juggling stuff. And the animations I have right now are good, they're just not really meant for that. So we have to do something different. But for now, they're fast enough so that the poise system works properly. Because before, I was having a weird bug with the poise where it seemed that no matter how much I hit an enemy, they would never like break. Or if they had less poise, they would just break constantly, right? There was no in between, right? You're supposed to hit an enemy 2 or 3 times before they break, preferably, depending on your weapon, right? And vice versa. So increasing the attack speed helped to fix the poise a little bit because the enemy was regaining their composure too quickly and we were attacking too slowly, which is why we weren't making any progress breaking their poise. So I increased the poise reset timer and I made the attacks faster, so now you can actually like hit an enemy enough times to really get them to stun for a second, and they too to you. But it's not so constant that it's impossible to fight either. It needs a little bit of tuning and adjusting, I think, but it does work. The next thing I did, the code that I burned down, is the armor system. I had programmed almost all the different, like I programmed like 3 out of 5 different classes of armor, you know, like a helmet, chest, legs, you know. And obviously armor is used to calculate things like defense and poison resistance and blah, 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 right? So it had connections in a lot of other scripts. And I got to the point with the 3D model that I've been working on for Livia, and I was like, dude, like, making multiple armor for her is going to be a pain, right? But you need the benefit of armor in an RPG because our armor is meant to help build your playstyle, right? If you're doing stealth build, you get armor that's for stealth build, right? You mix and match pieces if you're doing some kind of mixed build. So we needed something to replace that won't cause me the additional emotional pain of having to sculpt it. And I realized, duh, there's tarot cards in the game already. We'll use those and we'll equip them, right? So probably inspired by Genshin, because I've been playing a lot of that. But I liked that, you know, you have a character that looks a specific way, and maybe you have unlockable outfits that are part of like a story or something, but making them stronger, building them according to certain preferences, falls on the artifacts that you give them, which don't change their appearance. And I like that, because Livia, as the main character, I want her to have a look and a feel, right? You know, I want her, the way I describe it is I want her to be cosplayable, you know? I want you to be able to look at somebody and say, you're dressed as Livia Redden from that one game. Not, you're dressed in one of the 15 armor sets from that one game. Because it is a character you're playing as, it's not so much of an self-insert. And while I think it's cool when people cosplay, like, the armor sets from Elden Ring or something, they're cosplaying the armor set and cosplaying the, you know, protagonist of the story, but they're not cosplaying a concrete character, right? And Livia is very much a concrete character. So, from that perspective, you know, she needs to have her own specific outfits. But then they also need to be, she needs to be buildable, so tarot cards. My answer to everything. The other code that I burnt down was my camera system, and that doesn't sound too hard, but then you realize that it was also being used with my lock-on system, because previously, and I'll insert some footage here, the lock-on system would directly point at the enemy, so it would stay around Livia in whatever radius, but it would point at the enemy, and because the camera is pointing at the enemy when Livia attacks, since she attacks in the direction the camera is pointing, she would point at the enemy. Right, and that's how the targeting worked. It worked really well, and it made combat much more, like, pleasurable, but I also felt like it wasn't optimal for fighting, for fighting large enemies. And it's because they move quickly, and the camera goes all kooky because they're moving too fast, and it just was not a good feeling when you're playing it with that. So what I thought would be a better idea is giving Livia a little bit of an auto target. So she's got a range that's directly in front of her between like her peripheral vision and what's in front of her. So not really behind her. So it's not completely auto target, right? And she'll detect an enemy and she'll detect the enemy right when she goes to hit. So every time you do a hit, it'll update to see who is closest to her within that viewing range, right? So that way, if you're in a crowd, she'll automatically hit whatever is in front of her, which is really nice. I quite enjoy it. So the other thing is, I fixed the Nexus, is what you might call it. It's the place you go when you die. Because it's very inspired by a little bit Dark Souls-esque kind of stuff. I call it Headspace because it's supposed to represent Livia's, like, psyche. Something about burning down all of that code somehow broke the Nexus, and it was making my computer just, like, it would make, like, a little pop noise and then just shut down completely, and I'd have to plug it off, like, unplug it and plug it back in to get it to work. I don't know why. I don't have any crash logs, I didn't get no kind of memo from my computer for what happened. It was just broken. And I tried to fix it, and sometimes it would be fixed, and sometimes it wouldn't be. So I just deleted it. I think it had to do probably with the terrain builder plugin that I was using in that scene. Something in it got corrupted somehow, and it was probably running an infinite loop in some place trying to find whatever it was looking for. So I created a new scene, which I actually am liking a little bit more. It's just an endless black expanse. And my idea, I think, is to spawn things in as we do checkpoints throughout the game, because it is Livia's head. I do want to put some sort of water element in it, reminiscent of, like, Evil Within, because I think water is a really good... I don't know, there's, like, a symbolism of it. It's like something serene and calming, but also deep and scary, right? And I feel like that's Livia's mind. So, yeah. The other thing I fixed, which I kind of didn't want to fix, was the jiggle thigh bug thing where Livia's legs were wiggling around when she was in the idle position. And it had to do with weight painting on the rig's bones. And the reason I couldn't fix this back last semester when I was trying to is because I didn't know anything about 3D modeling and character rigging at the time. So I didn't know to think that there was something wrong with the model, right? I thought there was something wrong with the animation. I replaced the animation like 10 different times. I changed the settings in the animation. I checked the physics, any physics related anything in the script anywhere, right? That wasn't it. It had to do with the weight on the hand and the thigh. And because I was using a walking animation that was masking just the hand to close the hand around the weapon, even though it should have ignored the walking part of the leg, it didn't because of the weight. So the legs were jiggling in that one spot as if they were trying to walk, but the rest wasn't. Super weird, kind of fun to look at. There's a reel of it on my Instagram because she's pretty. Like, what can I say? Anyway, yeah, and then doing a bit of environmental design, which you will be seeing kind of B-rolling while we're talking, because I can't record a devlog live while I'm doing a playthrough of the game at the same time, because we'll be here all day. So I'll just kind of put some stuff in the background. So just working on a little bit of environmental design. My thought with that is, this is an island, so it's semi-open world-ish, kind of. And so it's an explorable map, and the way I want it to be is the same way that actual civilization forms, right? So people build villages and then cities and then kingdoms around bodies of water that have natural protection, like having mountains on both sides or stuff like that, right? Because that's the two most important things when you have a society, is food and safety. So I'm building centers of like buildings and stuff like that in the places on the map that have those features, and then I will go through and connect roads between them, and then along those roads I'll put more buildings. That would make sense, right? If there's a long road between two large-ish centers, then there would understandably be some sort of inn or something in between them. So that's kind of the idea. My next steps from this point, right, is to replace the animations that we're using for attack, because the ones that I have right now just don't look good fast, and I want them to look good fast, right? I want them to be like Devil May Cry, like I want them to be snappy and cool, you know? Those are hard to find. That takes a level of skill, I think, to really make animations that look good when you're like doing backflips and being cool and doing that. That's a level of skill beyond just regular animations. So they're gonna cost me a pretty penny or a lot of time, and as we know, time is money, right? And I don't have much time because this is for a school assignment that is due in December. So yeah. Some things will probably be done in time for the demo that's released in December for school credit. Other things that are more polish, like it'll be polished enough for a demo, but the more polished polish will be in March when we release the Kickstarter campaign and the fully fleshed demo of the entire region of Abaddon, which will be almost a game in and of itself. So yeah. Let's see, so I also need to update the UI with the tarot cards. So the tarot cards work, they affect the character stats. When you remove them, they remove the character stats that have been added, etc. Now we just have to make that doable inside the game, so it's not just being done in the engine, which isn't too hard. I'm just going to pretty much copy code from other scripts, augment it to go with the tarot cards instead of like the weapons, because it's the same kind of way that the quick slot inventory thing works. The other thing I need to do is to have some kind of spell equipment slot of some sort. I know that in other games, in Dark Souls games, usually you equip your spells by talking to somebody in the game, right? But the way Livia learned spells in this game is actually through prolonged use of swords and other weapons that have that sort of spell imbued on it, right? So the more you use a fire sword, the more proficiency you generate with that sword. And then eventually you reach enough proficiency where you can use that spell by itself on your like other hand while holding a new sword on the first hand. So they stay in your inventory. It's just a matter of equipping them so you can have them in your quick slots, essentially. So doing that would be important, as well as adding in a little bit of a clause in the weapon class that has to do with what kind of magic the weapon uses, if any. How many points of proficiency do you need in that weapon to be able to gain its spell? And then how do you gain that proficiency, right? So that's its own scaling thing, and part of what I spent the last 4 weeks doing was just scaling. Just doing equations and doing math and balancing. That was a lot of what we were doing behind the tarot system because we needed to implement it, and it has a lot different balance than just simple armor does, because it does a lot more than just armor does. There might be even tarot cards probably that increases our proficiency gain of weapons, probably something in the swords suit, because that would make sense. Let's see. I have to do the cutscene system, which I think is my top priority right now, actually, because I need to get that vertical slice done. I have to do poison, and then also adding in more items that relate to curing poison effects, you know? And then I might replace the potion bottles with herbs of some sort, and just have it be like harvestables that you find throughout the world or something. I'll think about that. Right now, you can heal yourself. That's all that matters. After we've done that, then I think it will give us everything that we need. That's going to be stuff that needs to be serialized. Everything that would be in our inventory, everything that would be in our player stats, you know, all that good stuff. Would be saved someplace. All that good stuff would need to be saved someplace, right? So that's one of the things that I need to go in and really set up properly, so that I can save and serialize things accordingly. In addition to the saving system, I would also need to update the world gate system, which is like the portals that help you teleport throughout the level versus like between levels and stuff. Giving it a menu so you can actually choose which gate in a certain area that you want to go to. And those gates depend on which bosses you've defeated, and the bosses that you've defeated would be from your saved data. So that would be part of that system. So it would get done before the saving, so I actually have something to save. After that, adding in some sort of either swimming or drowning or both, because there is a lot of water and I don't want people to just walk across the bottom of the ocean. That would ruin the immersion. So some sort of something that is a hazard needs to happen when we get in the water. Don't care what it is, it just has to hurt. And I think that's it for my outgoing goals of what needs to be done. And I will see you guys hopefully next week with a more recent devlog, which will be shorter.